Welcome to the Compliance Officer's Playbook podcast. For the last decade, we've lived with this promise, right? The promise of permissionless, censorship-resistant blockchains.
hmm
The underlying philosophy was pretty radical. If a transaction followed the deterministic rules of the code, it would be included, full stop.
No questions asked.
Exactly. But that whole philosophical theory has just run headlong into the non-deterministic and profoundly powerful reality of international sanctions.
Specifically from the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC.
We are watching the centralization of decentralization happen in real time. And it seems to be driven entirely by this regulatory pressure to comply.
It's really not just philosophical anymore. This convergence of crypto's theoretical neutrality and the, frankly, crushing weight of compliance has exposed these profound, measurable vulnerabilities.
Vulnerabilities in systems built on the very idea of being unblockable.
That's it. And for you, the listener, whether you're running a virtual currency exchange, developing a DeFi protocol, or, just managing a corporate network, this conversation is essential.
So what are we focusing on today?
We're going to look at the quantifiable impact of OFAC sanctions on digital assets, these shocking new security vulnerabilities that are now kind of baked into supposedly decentralized networks, which brings us to this critical 46% problem.
Okay.
And most importantly, the compliance lessons for virtual currency providers around evasion tactics like VPNs and the failure of what we call ancillary services.
To really get a handle on the stakes here, I think we need to look at the enforcement data. This isn't just theoretical risk, it's tangible, seized value.
The scale of enforcement is it's tremendous, and it's growing quickly, which really tells you that OFAC is fully operational in this domain.
What are the numbers that we're looking at?
As of early 2025, we are tracking a staggering $1.8 billion in crypto assets.
1.8 billion.
Billion. And that's not fines. That's assets that have been frozen or seized directly due to OFAC actions, just pulled right out of circulation.
Wow.
And the regulatory targeting is accelerating. The number of OFAC-designated crypto wallets, it rose by a steep 32% year over year.
32%?
Yeah, now totaling 1,245 addresses on the specially designated nationals list, the SDN list.
And where are they seeing the most activity? Is it still Bitcoin?
Overwhelmingly. When we analyze where sanctioned entities are trying to transact, Bitcoin remains the primary vector. It accounts for about 65% of identified illicit transactions.
Okay.
Ethereum follows at 18%, and then stablecoins, those dollar-pegged digital assets, make up about 12%. This isn't some future risk. This is the reality of the regulatory climate right now.
Okay, let's ground this discussion in the core authority. For companies in the digital asset space who might believe their non-custodial software or decentralized protocols somehow exempts them from U.S. law, what is the core mandate that OFAC wields?
Well, OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, is the U.S. Treasury agency with a mandate to administer and enforce economic sanctions programs globally.
And these are tools of foreign policy.
Exactly. Tools of U.S. foreign policy and national security. Their authority is comprehensive, and it covers two main types of programs. First, you have comprehensive sanctions against entire regions or governments.
Like Iran, North Korea?
Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Syria, the Crimea region of Ukraine. And second, you have targeted sanctions against specific individuals or entities, regardless of where they are, if they're deemed a threat or are engaged in illicit activity.
But how does a U.S. Treasury agency actually enforce those geopolitical mandates in a purely digital, borderless environment?
The mechanism is simple, but it's incredibly sweeping. The sanctions compliance obligations apply equally to transactions involving virtual currencies as they do to traditional fiat.
So there's no difference?
No difference. OFAC has been absolutely unequivocal on this point since their first guidance. And this compliance burden, it applies to any U.S. person.
Which means?
Any entity incorporated in the U.S., any person physically located there, and their subsidiaries. And crucially, the enforcement reach extends to exchangers, administrators, miners, wallet providers, essentially any facilitator in the crypto ecosystem.
So if you're under U.S. jurisdiction, the code you operate or the service you provide has to comply with sanction screening.
That's the bottom line.
And the regulatory standard here is what keeps compliance officers up at night. Strict liability. For anyone who doesn't know, why is that standard so unforgiving in this space?
Strict liability is really the linchpin of OFAC's enforcement. And it's brutally effective at creating incentives for hypervigilance.
How so?
It means that civil penalties can be imposed on a U.S. person even if they did not have knowledge or reason to know they were engaging in a violation.
So intent doesn't matter.
Intent does not matter. Put simply, if a prohibited transaction occurs on your watch, you are liable.
So if a crypto exchange processes a transaction for someone on the SDN list and their screening system just missed a misspelling or an alias, that exchange is still legally on the hook.
Precisely. Now, OFAC will consider factors like the sophistication of a company's compliance program when they determine the final penalty amount. But the sheer fact of the violation is established under strict liability. The entire system is built to incentivize companies to overcomply and to invest heavily in robust preventive controls.
Which explains the rapid increase in enforcement actions.
It's why we've seen it. By 2025, OFAC has already sanctioned 57 individuals and entities specifically for illicit crypto activities. They are actively pursuing these cases.
This regulatory reach was demonstrated, I think, spectacularly with the Exodus Movement, Inc. fine. When we talk about Exodus, we aren't talking about a massive centralized exchange holding customer funds.
No, not at all. This was a non-custodial digital asset wallet software firm. The violation wasn't about holding assets, but about something far more subtle.
And the Exodus case is really a masterclass in how sanctions risk just permeates every corner of a digital asset business, right? Even those operating on so-called decentralized principles.
It is. The settlement amount was $3.1 million. That was broken down into $2.47 million paid up front, with $630,000 suspended.
Suspended on what condition?
Contingent on them spending that money on improving their compliance programs. The violations themselves, they happened between October 2017 and January 2019.
So what exactly did they do that merited a multi-million-dollar fine?
The primary violation was providing ancillary services, specifically customer support, 254 times to users located in Iran.
Ah, Iran, a comprehensively sanctioned country.
Right, meaning virtually all commercial interactions are prohibited. Exodus's personnel, despite knowing or having reason to know these users were in Iran, just continued to provide technical assistance. And OFAC deemed that a prohibited service under the Iranian transactions and sanctions regulations.
So the failure wasn't the software itself, but the human touch point, the customer service.
That's the key nuance. It proved that in the eyes of OFAC, ancillary services like technical support or, troubleshooting are just as sanctionable as processing a financial transfer. But the most egregious finding, which OFAC cited as a major aggravating factor, involved 12.
If you're loving this conversation and want to be part of keeping it going, the best way to support the show is to become a paid subscriber on Apple Podcasts. You'll get access to the full episode, plus every deep dive we do. Head to Apple Podcasts, search Compliance Officer's Playbook, and join our growing community today. Invite listeners who love this show to become a paid subscriber today for $5 USD, and get full access to all premium episodes packed with insights, stories, and value they won't find anywhere else. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.